Hey guys, this is Russ, and this is She Wolf Alchemy. And today we are doing just a quick little check in. And we're talking about when the chapter ends, but the identity remains. I came across, and you guys are probably going to see me post this on Instagram sometime later this week, but I came across this quote that I was just like, I actually really love that. And I think we need to talk about it. The quote goes, "You spend your entire life protecting an identity you only created to survive a chapter that has already ended." And the reason I love this quote so much is because for a lot of us, we have versions of ourselves that were never meant to be permanent identities. They were emergency responses. Maybe you became hyper independent because nobody showed up. Maybe you're the strong friend because there wasn't room for you to fall apart. Maybe you became cold because being soft was dangerous in the environment that you originally wanted to be soft in. Some of us became overachievers because accomplishment was the only way we received love or validation that felt like love. Maybe we became funny because humor is what kept everybody else calm, or like agreeable because disagreement had consequences. Maybe you became like the person who never needs anything because needing something once came with humiliation. And the tragedy of this is that these things aren't who you are. It's something you learn to become because you had to survive. You survive an environment that required those skills, that required those personas, that required those facades. And you just forgot to stop living in them. Even though you're in a new place, you're in a new environment, you are in a new chapter, you have nothing left to prove. You are still living in that persona that was never originally yours. So let's talk about the difference between identity and adaptation, right? We tend to say things like, I am so independent, I don't trust nobody, I'm just a very private person, I'm a workaholic, I don't feel attached, I've always been the responsible one. But sometimes the I am is really just the I learned to be. And those are two very different statements. There is a difference between who you are, your personality, and the adaptation of who you had to be. Ask yourself, how much of what I call my personality is actually just a collection of strategies that worked? Because if something protected you successfully for, let's say, 5 or 10 years, of course, after a while, it starts to feel like you. Armor starts to feel like your skin. And you don't have to be angry at yourself or bash yourself for holding on to that survival identity. There's no need to demonize our old self. That identity did its fucking job. If hyper independence is what got you out of a horrible situation, thank it. If emotional detachment helped you survive chaos, hey, pat on the back for that. If perfectionism got you access to opportunities that your environment was never going to hand you, it's okay to acknowledge that. If being intimidating stopped people from fucking with you, there is some intelligence in that adaptation. There is no real healing in looking back and saying, God, I was just so dysfunctional and leaving it there and using it to criticize self. The healthier interpretation is to go, that was for the environment I was in, but I am no longer in that environment. The problem isn't that you built armor, it's that you forgot to take the armor off after the war. For a lot of us, we have survival traits that socially rewarded us, right? Things that helped us survive, we later got praise for. I mean, how many of us got praised for being a woman that never asks anybody for shit, can do it on her own. I know you gonna get it. I know I don't gotta worry about her. She gonna get to it. The person who constantly gets called ambitious, you don't ever take a day off. The person who anticipates everybody's needs. And you're talking about how you're so thoughtful, you're so caring. No one gets me quite like you. The person who tolerates everything that gets called loyal. The person who never expresses a hurt gets called mature. The person who controls every detail gets called organized. See, sometimes those armors get praised and they get rewarded, and it creates another problem. People start rewarding you for coping mechanisms that you are trying to outgrow. Look at it as if your dysfunction just has amazing PR. And now releasing that dysfunction feels like it is challenging your identity because it's going to change how people experience you. And now, if I take all these things off, if I'm not big dog, if I'm not go getter, if I'm not Miss Go Get It, if I'm not Mr. Make Shit Happen, if I'm not Mr. Who Gonna Challenge Me, who am I? And if I've attached so much of who I think I am to those identities, it feels like then taking those identities off feels like self destruction. And it doesn't help that so many other people are so invested in the old us, right? Sometimes we aren't the only people protecting that identity. Sometimes your family may need you to be the responsible one. The homies may need you to remain the one that always listen, always take care of stuff. Your job, your career may love the version of you. Maybe that version of you is a little reckless and can get down and dirty and get shit done when nobody else got the balls to do it. Maybe that version of you has terrible boundaries and always picks up where everybody else fell off. Certain people may prefer the old version of us because it helps strengthen things for them. And when you suddenly change, it's why you acting different. Oh, you think you better than everybody else? Sometimes we get told we're selfish. Sometimes we get told, "Oh, you're not who I really thought you were." Ah, that's the one. You're not who I really thought you were. Because old us might have let people get away with a lot of things. And now having boundaries, now having self-protection, they're gonna challenge that and tell you that you're selfish for it. Or on the flip side of that, some of us, we are the bulldog. We are the person like, ain't nobody gonna step to me. I'm gonna make it happen. And now we're in a phase where we're like, I actually just want rest. I don't wanna step up to every challenge. I don't want to be the person that gotta handle everything and prove to you, beat on my chest, let my ego do the singing. I actually want to step back. And there might be a whole team depending on us to do all the heavy work and lifting so they don't have to. So when we're like, actually, I want to mature, I want to be a different version of me. I want calmness. I want peace. I want to sleep at night. I want to not need medications to go to sleep at night. It is you gonna let them punk you like that? You gonna prove them right? Because the version of you they benefited from may have been built during a period when you didn't know you were allowed to have needs. Those needs may have been softness, and they told you, nah, you don't get softness. Those needs may have been, I need rest, I need peace. Nah, bro. We taking over the city. I'm not here to say every person who dislikes you making a change is automatically toxic. Sometimes we can absolutely overcorrect. But I do want to remind you that discomfort from other people is not automatically evidence that your growth is wrong. If your identity was created for a very particular environment, you may unconsciously keep choosing environments where the identity makes sense. If I grew an identity that required me to be a shark, and I get the opportunity to go to calm waters, to go on land, to go to go in peaceful streams, I might choose never to take those opportunities because I know sharks can't survive in that type of water. Sharks can't survive on land. So I keep choosing treacherous waters, even though I'm tired, even though I'm exhausted, even though I don't really like being a shark. If your identity is I'm the person who saves everybody, then healthy people feel off to us. It feels awkward. It feels like it's stretching us, and we don't know what to do in the environment with healthy people. We are used to being the healthiest person. What happens when other people are healthy? No, Imma go back to chaos. Imma self-sabotage and Imma go back to chaos. If your identity is nobody can be trusted, then even when we are in safe places with people who just happen to be human, who make mistakes, but if my identity is I trust no one, then every inconsistency looks like overlooking evidence of unreliability. And we cut off opportunities for advancement with really good folks. And we place ourselves with people I know I can't trust. I know I can't be around, but at least I know it. But that good, healthy person over there who every now and then falters because, again, they are human, nah, because you make me wanna trust you. And the idea that you might be human and falter is too much. So I'd rather go be around the people I know I can't trust, that are always gonna falter, and I'll just stay on guard with, 'cause at least I know my role with them. If my identity is I have to fight for everything, then I'm with people, then when I'm in opportunities that are just given to me freely, I will become a bull in a china shop and mess up that peace. I will be the one that creates the fight. If my identity is I'm always overlooked and being seen, it's going to make me so uncomfortable that I shrink myself, even if I've been dying to be seen and to be chosen and to be adored. Sometimes we think like, why does the same shit keep happening to me? And the uncomfortable answer is because your identity needs supporting evidence. Not necessarily consciously, but psychologically. Familiarity feels coherent. I use this line with my clients all the time, but and you guys probably have heard me say this on previous episodes, but if I grow up in chaos and I get used to chaos, even if the whole time in my childhood and my environment, I'm like, I want to get away from this. I want to get away from this. Even when I escape, when I go off into the world and I meet people that feel like chaos, I meet them and I think to myself, oh, you feel like home. And I know what to do when I get in environments that feel like home. I know what role to take. I know what to expect. And I just naturally go into it unconsciously, completely forgetting that I hated how home felt. It's not that you're necessarily addicted to suffering, but you may be addicted to remaining recognizable to yourself. And if I recognize myself as a healer, then I become addicted to environments that require me to heal. If I become addicted to being the bad guy, then even when I'm like, I don't want to be the bad guy, I don't want to be the person that is always built bulldozing through sceneries. When you get a chance to take off that mask and just be a regular person, you can't help but to put the pooch shiesty back on and go back to being a villain. You start pledging yourself to an identity that was just supposed to protect you for a period. It's not who you are. The thing is, when you take on these identities for survival, something's supposed to change when survival actually works. You spend years saying, when I get enough money, when I leave this house, when my kids get older, when I finish school, when I prove to them I am that man, I am that woman. And the thing is, at some point, you eventually do, right? But now what? You did the thing. Survival gave you something incredibly powerful. It gave you a mission. There was something to fix. There was something to escape. There was something to prove. There was something to achieve. There was something to protect yourself from. But what happens when the emergency disappeared? When you achieve the thing, when you prove the point, when you escaped? Sometimes we think we'll just experience relief, but for some of us, we experience almost like an emptiness. Not because peace is bad, but because you built an identity around overcoming. And now you're at a point where life is asking you to become someone who doesn't need an enemy, who is in the middle of a crisis or a struggle or a mountain to justify your existence. And if it feels like you have been in crisis mode, protector mode, overcoming mode for so long, once that thing is taken away, it can feel terrifying. This is new emotional territory. This is a new landscape. And there can be grief involved in having to give up that identity, even when the identity was painful, because you're not just releasing behaviors, you're releasing a version of yourself that you have known intimately. Maybe you've been the strong one since you was 8, or the successful one since you was in high school or your early 20s. Or maybe you've been the fucked up one since your mid 20s. You could have been the caregiver, the rebel, the victim, the fixer, the responsible daughter, the one who don't need nobody. Mr. I make it happen and you ain't gonna challenge me. But if I take that away, are you still confused who you are? That's a strange mourning period between I know who I used to be and I don't fully know who it is I am becoming. That's not regression. That's identity transition. And you have survived many things, and you will survive this transition as well. Again, sometimes we want to protect identities because we need suffering to mean something. This goes deeper than just it being a habit. If I admit I don't have to live this way anymore, what does that say about all the years that I did? If I learn boundaries now, does that mean I may have to acknowledge how much I tolerated? If I stop overworking, do I have to confront how much of my life I sacrificed? If I accept help, I may have to grieve all those years nobody helped me. If I accept that I can learn softness, I can be safe, other people can be safe. I may finally feel the grief of all those years safety wasn't an option. Sometimes holding on to our identity isn't just stubbornness, it's grief avoidance. Because becoming someone new can force you to finally understand what happened to the old you. At some point, though, we have to eventually stop romanticizing our coping mechanisms. And I'm not judging y'all. I struggle with this myself. It is something I feel like, look, I turned 35 this year. And when I tell y'all, I was in New Orleans for my birthday, right? I literally cried on my last day out at a bar with my homegirls at 34 because I just had this overwhelming feeling of um, all these identities that I was grieving because I knew I had to let them go. I literally I literally cried my way into 35. Don't get me wrong, I had fun, I had a good time, but, like, I literally was crying, literally on Bourbon Street, Like, on Bourbon, they have these, places that sell they're slushy shops, but they sell, like, Jello shots and, these, like, huge fake, what are those called? Those needle things. I was, like, 4 of those deep in. And I think Gabby was, like, just feeding me shots of Henny on the dance floor, feeding me shots of Henny, and I woke up the next morning, 35 years old, and was like, "Okay, there's certain things that I just can't allow no more." So, I'm not preaching on y'all, I'm not doing this to be like, "Bad y'all need to change." Hey, we need to change. Or maybe y'all good and I'm the fucked up one, that's fine, that is a thing too. But I'm saying it to say it is something more common than you think, and it's so easy to not recognize how actively we are avoiding something that life has been begging us to let go of because it was so helpful, so protective at certain points of your life. But there is a difference between that survival version of you, which maybe was I survived without anybody, and what that version of you then lies to you and tells yourself, which may be, therefore, I should need nobody. Maybe it wasn't that for you. Maybe yours was I had to protect myself. And so the lie you now unconsciously tell yourself is so nobody should ever get access to me. Maybe it was I built everything myself. And now the lie is so I don't need to receive anything from anyone else. Whatever it is, at some point, the thing that once made you powerful can become the thing that destroys you, weakens you, and makes you feel like this life is no longer worth it because I'm doing this survival thing and I feel so incredibly unhappy and so incredibly like life is just passing me by and it feels so draining and pointless. And it's because that trait, yep, it did genuinely once save you. And questioning can feel like you are questioning your strength, but maybe strength isn't continuing to carry that thing. Maybe the strength is recognizing that you don't live there anymore. You don't have to look at this as asking yourself, do I need to become a better version of me? Maybe instead look at it as if you're asking yourself, how do I become a different version of me? Because sometimes that word better keeps certain old identities intact, right? Stronger, more productive, more disciplined, more successful, more independent. And maybe the evolution isn't always becoming more. Sometimes the evolution is coming softer, slower, more receptive, more playful, more expressive, less impressive, less useful to everybody else, but more alive to me. So I'm gonna give you guys some questions to kind of help you do a self audit with. Personally, I think these would be great questions to ask yourself for journaling exercises. I know a lot of times when I'm talking to clients, I'm like, okay, let's talk about journaling. They're like, I don't even know how to journal. I don't know what to think about. And so I like to give prompts every now and then. So here's a couple prompts that you guys can utilize to help you really process what letting go of that identity and transitioning to a different version of yourself may look like. Question one: who did I have to become to survive the hardest chapters of my life? What did that version of me protect me from? Which traits from that version still genuinely serve me? Which one of those traits am I defending simply because they've become part of my identity? What does my current life require that my old life didn't? And lastly, what does my current life no longer require. Now, lastly, before I close up today's episode, just a reminder, I'm not saying your survival self has to die. They don't, but they don't have to run the whole fucking show anymore. That is the message. That version of yourself can just become wisdom instead of being your whole identity. That can be the version of you that you use for consultation instead of the version of you automatically obey. The goal isn't to erase who you are. It isn't to hate the hardened version of yourself. And it isn't to pretend that that chapter didn't happen. But it is to maybe help you recognize that that version of you was built for a world that may no longer exist, for a life that you may no longer be actively living or wanting to live. A lot of times, at first, survival means learning how to become whoever it is you need to become to make it through. But healing means realizing you don't owe that version of yourself permanence. So that's all I have for today's check in. I feel like this is under 30 minutes. I hope it's under 30 minutes. Y'all know I'm a Gemini, so who knows? I'm about to hit pause on this and it could pop up and it'd be like, that was an hour and 45 minutes. That has definitely happened before. But that's all I have for today's episode. We'll have a new episode in 2.5 weeks. In the meantime, listen to this, listen to it again and again, share it with somebody, go back and listen to some older episodes. And you hear the sound of my voice plus the voice of either Nick or Gabby with me in 2 more weeks. Be sure to head over to the Instagram at She Wolf Alchemy. Follow, like, share, and we'll have a new episode for you guys shortly. Bye.